Consider for a moment that the spiritual stories you have been told represent only a single stream of a vast, flowing river. Not an untrue stream, but an incomplete one. Imagine that for generations, a more profound current has been flowing beneath the surface, not in secret darkness, but quietly present, waiting between the lines of rigid doctrines, shaped by politics and the quest for control. What if the deepest truths, the ones that could awaken your innate nature and reconnect you to the source of all life, were intentionally diverted? Ask yourself this: why would powerful institutions throughout history go to such lengths to standardize the narrative of a simple, enlightened teacher? In our time together, we are going to explore what was gently set aside, the teachings that were deemed too disruptive, the texts that were left in the dust, and the one singular message that could liberate the human spirit. Most importantly, we will touch upon the final insight, the most potent of all, that may reshape the very way you perceive your world. Before we journey onward, find your stillness and presence. And if this exploration resonates, share it with someone who is ready to look beyond the surface, because what you are about to reflect upon might alter your understanding of existence, of change, and of your fundamental purpose here. Let us begin. To see what was hidden, we must first acknowledge what was presented. History is often told through a few chosen accounts, which become the official story. But if we look deeper, we find something truly illuminating. In the early centuries of many wisdom traditions, there were countless perspectives circulating freely. Some of these texts were fundamentally different from those that became official canon. In the quiet sands of a forgotten landscape, a collection of ancient scrolls was once brought back into the light. Among them was a text that offered a profound shift in perspective. Unlike other narratives, this one contained no grand spectacles, no dramatic historical events. Instead, it presented a sage, a master of awareness, a guide to hidden knowledge who spoke in short, potent verses. These were not words for passive acceptance, but seeds for deep inner contemplation. One of the most insightful passages conveys this: if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will serve as your liberation. If you fail to bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will lead to your suffering. This is not the voice of a distant authority. This is a guide, an invitation into your own inner landscape, a teacher of self-realization. This presence does not point to external structures or mediators. It points directly back to you. This perspective, along with others that spoke of a balanced and integrated spirit, were deemed a great challenge. Why? Because they placed the power of awakening squarely in the hands of the individual. They taught that ultimate truth was not held by a select few or contained within stone walls, but resided in the silent core of every human heart. And here, the stream of history was forcefully redirected. Centuries ago, when a certain spiritual movement was co-opted by a powerful empire, its nature was changed from an inner journey to an external institution. With power came a need for control. The great councils of that era were not merely forums for insight. They were exercises in consolidating a single narrative. Teachings that did not align with the hierarchical interests of the new power structure were labeled as dangerous or misleading. Words that would come to mean anything that strayed from the approved path. But what was this path of so-called dangerous ideas? It was simply the path of direct knowing. Its followers were not chaotic outsiders. They were sincere mystics, seekers of an inner awareness, a direct and unfiltered experience of the fundamental source. They believed liberation came not from external acts, but from awakening the spark of light within. They taught that this world of form is like a veil, a kind of waking dream. And the great sages, they were the awakeners, not figures to be revered from a distance, but mirrors of our own deepest potential. Consider this: why would any institution suppress a message of self-empowerment, of inner divinity, and of a direct connection to the source? Could it be that such a truth would dismantle the very need for a hierarchical structure? Would people still seek external mediators and rituals if they knew that the kingdom of tranquility was already present within them. A powerful hidden teaching states, "The great stillness is inside of you, and it is all around you." When you come to know your own true self, you become truly known, and you will understand that you are an expression of the living source. This is a profound liberation. It is the heart of the buried wisdom, and the journey goes deeper. When we explore the teachings attributed to a great female disciple, we discover something even more transformative. Here, this figure is seen not as a follower, but as a profoundly insightful and beloved student, perhaps the one who understood the teacher's core message most clearly. In one passage, the other students question why the teacher shared the deepest insights with her. One prominent leader resents her wisdom, and the teacher simply defends her clarity of perception. This path speaks of a spiritual journey where the soul moves through layers of illusion, shedding its attachments, its fears, and its false sense of self until it returns to a state of unity. Why was this awareness set aside? Because it suggested that wisdom and spiritual authority were not confined to a single gender. In a system built on patriarchal control, this simple truth was a quiet revolution. And yet this deep knowing refused to vanish. It was held in silent whispers, hidden in plain sight, and passed through generations, waiting for a time like this, when humanity is ready to listen from a new space of openness. Let me ask you, have you ever felt that something vital was missing from the spiritual narratives you were handed? Have you felt a quiet pull, a sense that there is a more profound dimension to the story? Acknowledge that feeling if it resonates with you, because this is merely the start of our journey. We will now explore how these potent teachings flowed onward, how they resurfaced in contemplative traditions across the globe, and the ultimate truth, the one buried deepest of all, about your own true nature. Are you prepared to continue this inward journey? They try to contain it, they try to reshape it, but truth, especially the truth of our inner nature, has a way of enduring. After the suppression of these liberating teachings and the rise of institutionalized belief systems, the core spiritual insights of the great sages did not disappear. They simply flowed underground, moving like a hidden river through the heart of quiet contemplative traditions, protected by those who knew that some truths are too vast to be owned by any single power. The essence of these lost teachings began to surface again among the desert contemplatives, the hermits and mystics who withdrew from the noise of the world to find connection not in grand temples, but in profound silence, in the stark beauty of nature, and in the stillness of their own being. They taught that true communion was found not in public displays, but in inward transformation. They kept the ember glowing. Later, in different ages, echoes of this buried wisdom found new life in the hearts of European mystics, who dared to speak of the divine light within every soul. One wrote, "The eye through which I see the source is the same eye through which the source sees me." For insights like this, he was accused of diverging from the accepted path. But the river did not stop there. The suppressed teachings also re-emerged through unique spiritual communities that flourished for a time. These groups often believed in a dualistic existence, a world of light and a world of shadow. They proposed that the material world was a field of illusion, a temporary state crafted by a lesser consciousness, a theme present in many ancient wisdom texts. According to their view, the great teachers came not to absorb our failings, but to remind us that we do not truly belong to this world of illusion, that our true nature is light, temporarily navigating a world of form. These communities often rejected the authority of rigid institutions, questioned the need for intermediaries, and recognized women as spiritual leaders. To the established powers, they were an unimaginable challenge, and so a great campaign was launched, not against outsiders, but against fellow spiritual seekers. These communities were pursued, their wisdom distorted, their people scattered. But even as they vanished, they carried a whisper of the hidden truth, and their silent courage endured. Allow that to settle. A message so profoundly liberating that the force of empires was used to silence it. And still it continued, through symbols, through coded manuscripts, through timeless teachings embedded in art, architecture, and oral traditions, this ancient wisdom survived. It flowed like a secret current through the ages, surfacing in certain philosophical texts where teachings like, as above, so below, reflect the very principles whispered in the buried Gospels. It appeared in the alchemical traditions, where the turning of lead into gold was not about chemistry, but symbolized a spiritual transmutation, the awakening of the divine essence within. Even in our modern era, pioneers of psychology and inner exploration have recognized the depth of this ancient knowing. They wrote about the integrated self, the archetype of the awakened one within, and how ancient texts preserved truths about the human spirit that organized systems had ignored or dismissed. One once said that these ancient seekers were the first depth psychologists. Is a new picture beginning to emerge? The established powers hid these teachings not because they were false, but because they were too direct, too potent, too awakening. A person who directly knows their true nature cannot be controlled. An individual who realizes they are an expression of the universe no longer bows to fear, no longer seeks intermediaries, and no longer participates in systems of guilt and shame masquerading as pathways to freedom. And now, we must speak of perhaps the greatest insight of all. The kingdom of heaven is not a place you journey to after you depart from this life. It is not a reward or a punishment. According to the hidden teachings, the kingdom is a state of consciousness. It is a return to unity. In one buried text, the sage says, "The grace of the universe is spread out upon the earth, but people do not see it." He is not speaking of a future paradise. He is speaking of now, of presence, of a reality concealed behind the veil of our conditioned minds, accessible not through dogma, but through stillness. And this is where the path turns inward for you. The purpose of this hidden wisdom was never just about challenging old structures or correcting history. It is about you, about your own spirit, about your sacred journey back to the source, because within you, a spark of this immense intelligence burns, a voice that whispers when the world becomes quiet, a knowing that there is more, that you are more. And that whisper is not an illusion. It is the call of your original self, the part of you that never forgot. Let me ask you this: have you ever felt, deep within, that truth is not something you acquire, but something you remember? If you have, you are not isolated in this feeling. You are beginning to awaken. Many sages have said that the greatest limitation is to forget who you are. The hidden teachings reveal that liberation is not about appeasing an external power, but about remembering your divine origin. And now you may begin to grasp why these texts were buried. A population awakened to its own inherent value, no longer fears punishment, no longer begs for approval, no longer depends on an external authority for a sense of peace. They become sovereign. They become integrated. And that is the message a great sage truly came to share. A message not of passive obedience, but of active awakening. Not of hierarchy, but of unity. Not of shame, but of unconditional love. A love that begins with the deep, unwavering knowledge that you were never, for a single moment, separate from the source. Are you beginning to feel it? The veil is thinning, but our journey is not yet complete. In our next moments together, we will explore how this sacred knowledge continues to influence other paths, how it lives on today, and how you can begin to walk the trail that the great teachers truly laid out. Not the one defined by institutions, but the living path of awakening itself. And finally, we will uncover the ultimate truth, the final key, the one realization that no power could ever bury, the one that will change everything. Throughout the course of history, truth has never been completely erased. It simply changes its form. What powerful institutions buried, silent mystics preserved. What empires tried to suppress, humble seekers remembered. The forgotten wisdom of the great teachers did not perish in the fires of persecution or fade in forgotten caves. It was transformed. It concealed itself in plain sight, behind symbols, rituals, and myths that still carry the echo of its original light. If you learn how to look, you begin to see it everywhere. In the sacred geometry of ancient temples, in the timeless paintings of Renaissance masters, in the poetry of Sufi sages, in esoteric traditions, and the quiet practices of yogis and Zen monks. They all whisper the same profound secret: you are not apart from the universe. You are a vessel for it. These traditions, though outwardly diverse, carry within them the same hidden current, a sacred insight that bypasses dogma and speaks directly to the soul. A path of return, a map back to the source within you. In the mystical diagrams of the Tree of Life, we see the soul's journey from the material world back to a state of divine unity. Each stage represents an internal shift, a deeper remembering of your true nature. This mirrors the very teachings found in the texts of the female disciple, where the soul ascends through levels of awareness, releasing illusion and fear. In certain philosophies, we read as within, so without, as above, so below, a perfect reflection of the sage's message that the kingdom of peace is both inside of you and all around you, waiting to be perceived by those with the eyes to truly see. In ancient myths, Sophia, or divine wisdom, is the feminine expression of the creative spirit. She represents the soul's journey into the world of form and her eventual return to the wholeness of the source. It is a cosmic story, but it is also your story, the journey of a soul that has forgotten and is now being reminded. This is the reminder the great teachers came to offer. Why did institutions suppress this? Because it places you at the very heart of the sacred narrative. Not as a flawed being in need of fixing, but as a sleeping divinity remembering its own power. No longer a passive follower, but an active explorer, a spark of the infinite with the potential to illuminate the world. Ask yourself, what kind of world would we create if every person truly understood this? What would happen if we truly believed that the sacred is not something outside of us, but is woven into the very fabric of our being? The implications are truly transformative. You begin to see that awakening is not a transaction, but a deep inner change. You begin to realize that symbols like the cross are not merely signs of suffering. They are archetypes of death and rebirth, the letting go of the small, fearful ego, and the resurrection of the true, expansive self. And now we must acknowledge the role that fear has played in keeping this truth hidden. Institutions have built entire systems where fear became the gatekeeper to peace. Fear of error, fear of questioning, fear of one's own inner world. But the great sages always said, do not be afraid. Over and over, they called people out of fear and into a state of love. They called them to awaken. In one buried text we read, ignorance creates bondage. Knowing brings freedom. If we discover the truth will make us free. This wisdom does not point to external beliefs. It calls for an inner revelation. That is the essence of true knowing, not intellectual ideas, but a direct, experiential awareness of your own deep nature. And now you may wonder, if these teachings hold such truth, where are they today? The answer is simple: they never went away. They live in the hearts of sincere seekers, in the practices of meditation, contemplation, and inner silence, and in the sacred rituals that point beyond form to awaken the formless. They live within you, if you are willing to remember. Consider the words from one of the hidden texts once more. Let the one who seeks not stop seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will be disturbed. When he is disturbed, he will be struck with wonder, and he will find peace. This describes the journey of awakening perfectly. First comes the seeking, the deep longing for something more authentic. Then comes the disturbance, the dissolving of everything you thought was certain. And finally comes the wonder, the realization that you were never separate from the source. The treasure you were seeking was inside you the entire time, but this path is not always easy. It requires the courage to step beyond the comfort of conditioned beliefs. It requires the quiet to hear the subtle guidance of your own spirit. It requires a kind of death, not of the body, but of the false self, the persona, the mask we have been taught to wear. And that is why this forgotten wisdom still matters so deeply today. Because in a world of constant noise, it invites you into stillness. In a world of fear, it invites you into love. In a world of control, it reminds you that you are sovereign. a living expression of the infinite, a seed of eternity walking through time. And this knowledge is not meant to simply be known. It is meant to be lived. When you awaken to your own inner source, you begin to see that same source in all beings. You become a source of light, not because you try to shine, but simply because you remember that you were a light. The message of the great sages, when stripped of centuries of distortion, is not one of exclusion or judgment. It is a profound call to oneness, to return, to remember. Let me ask you again, what would happen if humanity truly remembered this? If every man, woman, and child realized that heaven is not a destination, but a state of being, that the divine is not a distant ruler, but the very essence of love flowing through every single breath, that the path to liberation is not paved with fear, but with remembrance. You do not need to wait for life to end to find peace. You only need to wake up. And that is what the forgotten wisdom has been whispering for centuries. In the final part of our journey, we will unveil the last and most powerful truth of all, the truth that completes the circle, the truth that reveals who you truly are and why you are here. The very insight that systems of power feared the most, and what your own spirit has been longing to remember. This forgotten wisdom has always been more than a collection of ancient words. It is a mirror reflecting the part of yourself that society, tradition, and fear may have encouraged you to forget. And now, after all we have explored, the buried texts, the mystical traditions, the quiet truths, one final realization remains. A truth so profound, so empowering, that it strikes at the very root of the illusion we have lived within for generations. And it is this: you are the living teaching. Yes, you. The insights of the great sages were never meant to become rigid doctrines guarded by institutions. They were intended to awaken the divine spark within every single soul. A great teacher did not point to himself as an object of veneration. He was pointing to the potential that lies dormant within you. He once suggested, "You will do greater things than these." He didn't say that to inspire worship. He said it to call you into remembrance, to remind you that you are not just a temporary body, not just a flawed personality in need of external validation, but a spirit aflame, a direct expression of the divine source, veiled in a state of forgetting. And this is the ultimate truth that institutions of control feared most, that the awakened one is not a historical name. It is a state of consciousness, a level of awareness where you no longer see separation, no longer act from a place of fear, no longer seek validation outside of yourself. Instead, you awaken to the profound realization that you and the source are one, that the sacred spirit dwells not in temples built of stone, but within the silent sanctuary of your own being. This is not a mere metaphor. This is the very heart of the hidden path. In many ancient texts, the awakened mind is not a single person. It is the inner logos, the divine word, the light of awareness that lives within every human being. The great sage was a perfect embodiment of it, but not the exclusive owner. He came to awaken others to that very same light. This is why in one text he says, "Whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me. I myself shall become that person, and the hidden things will be revealed to them." Do you see the depth of this? To truly follow the path is not to bow before an image of the past. It is to become the living image. It is to walk the same inner journey, to embody the same boundless compassion, the same clarity, the same unwavering unity with the source. You are not here to worship an enlightened master. You are here to become an embodiment of enlightenment yourself. That is the radical, transformative message that was so carefully buried, because the moment you realize this, truly embody it, everything changes. You begin to live not as a seeker, but as a revealer, not as a believer, but as a knower. You begin to shine not from effort, but from a simple alignment with your truest nature. But do not misunderstand. This awakening is not a passive event. It is a path of transformation, a process of death and rebirth. The gentle burning away of illusion, layer by layer, until only truth remains. The truth that you were never separate, that you were never broken, that the divine presence never left you. It only waited patiently for you to remember. This is the mystery concealed in the symbol of the resurrection. Not a singular event long ago, but a living potential that happens within you when the conditioned self dissolves and the true self arises. This is the authentic meaning of being born again, not the repeating of a prayer or the joining of an institution, but awakening to your eternal nature, which exists beyond all names and all forms. And now you can truly understand why this message was so carefully set aside. Because it dissolves all mechanisms of control. Because it brings an end to fear. Because it unites humanity rather than divides it. If every soul knew they were a sacred expression of the divine, what power could an external religion hold over them? If every human embodied this awareness from within, what need would there be for institutions built on guilt, shame, and separation? None at all. And so this message was buried. Not because it was untrue, but because it was liberatingly true. But the era of forgetting is drawing to a close. Right now, as you listen to these words, something ancient is stirring within you. A quiet resonance, a deep knowing. It is not new information. It is a remembrance that you are the temple, the guide, the altar, and the flame. That the true teaching is not just in a book, but is a living transmission echoing through your own breath, your heartbeat, your very soul. And now, the choice is yours. You can turn away from this mirror, return to the comfort of familiar beliefs, and allow this to be just another fleeting moment of insight. Or you can answer the quiet call from within, the call to look deeper, to question with courage, to shed the old layers and step into the sacred fire of your own transformation. To begin living as what you truly are, a being of light, a child of the infinite, a carrier of a divine and unspoken purpose. This is not an invitation to abandon your path, but to go deeper than any path, to find the living truth that no text can contain and no authority can grant. The truth that has always been with you, waiting in the silence. So let me ask you, for one final time, what if the teachings of the great sages were never meant to create a religion, but to spark a revolution in human consciousness? And what if the real awakening is not an event we wait for, but the rise of this profound awareness within you? You see, the institutions may have hidden the texts, but they could never extinguish the truth, because the deepest wisdom was never in their hands to begin with. It has always been in yours. And now, may you remember, if this message has stirred something within you, share it. Allow others the chance to remember as well. Offer your own reflection in the space below. Let us create a community of quiet, awakened awareness. The veil has been lifted. The path has been illuminated. Now it is time to walk it. Welcome home. Thank you for your presence.